man, you have been at it for more than a decade and a half. Researching about this interview has been quite an enjoyable process for me, man. I mean, you probably have to endure most of the criticism back in the day, just paving the way for us, man.
Oh, like 17 years ago, we weren't arguing so much about fat. They really were dissing on protein at that time. It's like the Atkins diet is a high protein diet and it's going to do all this dastardly stuff to your diet or to your health. And now protein has kind of become a champion of the mainstream talking point. And now they've turned the attention to fat, but even that's falling flat on its face because we know we need the fats to be healthy and have our brains be vibrant and all the things. And so they're running out of things to complain about with low carb diets.
Looking at what keto has become now, have you ever looked back at the time where nobody knew what keto was? This is 2006. You started your diet in 2005, I believe. Right?
I started 2004.
2004.
That's when I started diet. And, you know, Dr. Atkins in his book, God bless him, he put things about ketogenic in there and to get you into a state of ketosis and all those things. But nobody was explaining the how. It was just, maybe you'll get into that if you reduce your carbs. And then, like, yeah, I mean, 2004, went through the whole process, started blogging in 2005 with Livin, Vida Low Carb as a blog. And then 2006 is when I started my podcast. But I was doing a lot of things before the podcast. But it was so lonely, I guess is the word for it. When I first started, there were a bunch of like nerdy scientist people and doctor people that were kind of talking about it. Dr. Westman, who I co-authored the Clarity books with. So he was out there. Dr. Steve Finney, who's back there on my wall, he was out there, Jeff Follick, but it really wasn't a whole lot of people talking about this. And I was like the first lay person to try to go, okay, what's all this scientific gobbledygook and how can I explain it to people where it doesn't go over their heads? And so that was that was my niche back in the day. And I still think it's my niche today, trying to translate that complicated language into stuff people can understand.
Today, everybody and their grandma knows about keto. Did you ever think that it will ever be this big where everyone knows everything about it, about keto? Did you ever think it would be this big?
I predicted that if it became popular with some famous person, that it would probably eventually. And then you had Kim Kardashian come out. Oh, I lost weight on the keto diet. Then you had LeBron James do it for 6 weeks during the summer about 5-6 years ago. And people, oh, what's this keto thing? And then you had just so many people talking about it. This book came out actually in 2014. It was the very first book that ever had keto in the title, Keto Clarity. And yeah, I mean, I influenced a lot of people that read my book and then they go, well, I want to learn more. And then they learn more, they educate themselves, and then they start writing books. And so it's been very gratifying from my perspective to know that I was a part of this movement that is now so worldwide.
Now you talk about being the first person, being the first lay person to be digging into the science of this. I'd like to get into your story here about you, starting your keto journey to where you are today. So 2004, you were over 400 pounds. What was the turning point there, and what did you do afterwards?
Yeah, so I had a whole bunch of like little signs leading up to me starting this journey. In the fall of 2003, I was getting in and out of cars and I was ripping pants. I literally would have to buy a new pair of pants and I'd try to go a little bigger, and they always seemed to rip getting in and out of cars. That sucked. And then getting on the airplane, having that like walk of shame of, can I have the extension, please? And then I was at like the carnival at the church down the road, and I saw these people going up and down this rock wall, and I couldn't do it. I thought I could. I attempted to do it and I couldn't do it. And for the life of me, I couldn't understand why. I didn't know how big I was. But one of the biggest straws that broke the camel's back was when I was substitute teaching that fall. And I was writing the English classes I was in, was writing the assignment for the day. And I remember back in the back row, back over there, I could hear this voice say, "Man, Mr. Moore, you're really fat." And it's like, whoa, like it hit me like a ton of bricks. Of course, the whole class laughed and I laughed to keep from crying. But yeah, it was bad. But I was frustrated. I had tried so many diets and had gone up, down, up, down, up, down on low fat diets. But then serendipitously that Christmas, I got a diet book for Christmas.
Mm.
Yes, a diet book for Christmas. Here, you're fat. Read this. And so I got it, and it was Dr. Atkins's book. And I was like, okay, I've heard of this guy. He has to be whacked. And so I'm reading his book, cut your carbs, eat more fat. And I'm like, this guy's a cardiologist. He's crazy. What?
What did you think? But no carbs.
I thought it was the craziest thing in the world, just on face value of what I knew. Because we all know things generally. We all think we know fat's going to clog your arteries. We think you need carbs for energy. All these little like mantras that we believe.
And this is back in 2004. Where
and that was
it's still disruptive to this day, even if you think about it, right?
Yes.
And this is like 15, 16, 17 years ago.
Yeah, and it was vilified because 2004 was the year, a year after Dr. Atkins had slipped and fallen on the icy sidewalk in New York City, and he died from having his head get busted open. And so there was a lot of vilification of the Atkins diet. I stayed away from all that stuff. I stayed away from all the Atkins low carb products. I stayed away from all the negative news. I just read the book and I started the diet. So it was January 1st, 2004, went on the Atkins diet. And literally I did the calculations many years later. The day before I started on the diet, which was 20 grams of carbs, that induction phase, I had, take a guess, how many carbs do you think I had in that day before? This is going to be fun.
Day before you started it, man. 50? Whatever it is.
Whatever, higher. Whatever you have in your mind, go higher.
Oh, man, 100.
Much higher.
500.
1,600 grams of carbohydrate. And how do you get there? You drink a lot of soda. So each can of Coca-Cola is 45 grams of high fructose corn syrup. I had 16 of those. And then I would have fast food. I would have junk food like Little Debbie snack cakes. I would not just eat one or two packages. I would have the whole box times 2. Yeah, I was a junk food junkie. So going from that to 20 grams of real food carbs,
cold turkey,
that hurt a little. and it was a shock to the system. And I've never done hard drugs in my life, but I think I know what a crack cocaine addict feels like trying to wean off their drug. And my drug was sugar, and it was tough, but it only was 2-3 days. And then it was like all the skies opened up, and you could like feel better. The energy was already starting to come. I was still hungry and still things, but I was learning you've got to nourish yourself with fats and proteins. But it had to take me starting and being jarred into wanting to start that got me there. Before 10 was a shocker. I was on 3 prescription meds, so I wanted to get off of those things. And I had just watched my brother Kevin a few years prior have heart attacks at the very age I was starting. So I knew I needed to do it sooner than later.
What was your doctor talking to you? What was your doctor saying about your weight, and what was he advising you at the time?
Not a damn thing. And this is the sad part. People go to their doctors because they think the doctor is the purveyor of all things about their health. And let's be clear, they know a lot of things about health, but they don't know everything about your health. It was only after I started interviewing people on my podcast, especially medical doctors, that I realized they don't get training in nutrition. They don't learn about the role of carbohydrates, raising blood sugar and insulin levels, and what role seed oils, vegetable oils play on your inflammation. And the inflammation is at the heart of heart disease and not cholesterol. They're stuck in 1950s thinking regarding health, that high cholesterol is an issue, that eating saturated fat clogs your arteries, that sugar is benign as long as you eat it in moderation and control your calories. And we're still under those auspices today. But yeah, doctors, and mine especially, just oblivious. That just, you should cut back.
Tell me,
okay, gee. thought of that before.
Tell me this, Jimmy. How many times have you heard a doctor say, all you need to do is just go on a balanced diet, right? What does that mean?
I would be a millionaire if I got paid
What does one know about a balanced diet? Because they don't go into details about it. They just say, hey,
well,
all you need to do is just exercise and go on a balanced diet. That's it. So,
and the problem with balanced diet is it means all foods are on the table. And look, I don't think any food should be vilified, but some foods are less healthy than others. And so I think we need to get back to what is food, because a lot of the things that are out there on the grocery store shelf, I don't call them food. I call them food-like disease agents. So it's garbage. Call it. It's like it's garbage for your body, nutritionally void. Even the cereal aisle, fortified with blank number of vitamins. I'm like, you don't have to fortify real food, because real food's got it naturally. And so if we just taught people eat real food, that would be a tremendous shift away from the way we do eating now.
Going back to the medical profession, right? I can imagine in the beginning, you would really have to risk your career pushing this lifestyle, is it not? Like in the beginning?
Well, yes, because look, they are predicated on coming up with this thing called an ICD code. That's the fancy little medical code that says you've got X degree. Or disease, excuse me, you've got X disease. And so we've got an ICD code for that disease. But the problem is, once you have an ICD code assigned to you, there are these things called standard of care that they have to follow. This is like the protocol that when patient has X, you do Y. And so if patient has X, let's call it diabetes, type 2 diabetes, Y does not include a low carb diet. Y includes put them on metformin. Y includes, see if they need some exogenous insulin. Y means tell them it's going to be a progressive disease. You're just going to have to deal with this the rest of your life. Y says that your A1C, it needs to be within a range, but even that range is outside the range of what healthy could be if they just cut their carbs. And it's like, they're just managing the disease. They're not actually finding a cure for it.
How many people are actually talking about it back in the day when you were starting?
Low carb?
Yeah.
Look, I think on the down low, it's been known for a very long time within medical circles and even nutrition circles, but it's a whole heck of a lot more now. Because we have more science now. Like when I started the science, Dr. Westman, my co-author on the Clarity books, he did the very first ketogenic study, like really major ketogenic study. I think it was in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, 1999 that came out. And so he started this kind of whole Atkins becoming really big and kind of ketogenic diets coming on the map. But then his study kind of laid the groundwork for other researchers to come behind him. That's when Jeff Volek came out with his studies, and Steve Phinney, and I could go down the list of all the great researchers, William Yancey, that have done all of these amazing research studies. And now we have people like Dominique D'Agostino out there doing all of his great work. Like there's everybody and their mama's researching ketogenic now, because Dr. Westman and others were willing to stick their necks out and say, there's something to this ketogenic thing.
Why do you think that people like you are needed to spread the word about keto? Why do you think that people resonates more to you than a doctor talking about it?
Well, I'm a layperson, so I'm relatable to people, and I've been offered over the years to get degrees. I have been offered to get MD, PhD, and things after my name. They would pay my way and all that. I'm like, no. I think I have more power as empowered patient Jimmy Moore that doesn't have letters after my name. I do have a master's degree, so I do have an MA, but nothing to do with nutrition or anything. But I feel like I have more power. And the reason why I resonate is, and I'm going to be honest, a lot of these doctors, they're boring to listen to. Like, beta hydroxybutyrate, gluconeogen. And he's just like, okay, The average person isn't going to listen to that. So if I can make it funny and entertaining and people pay attention, then they want to dig deeper into that. And that's been the secret to my success is I can follow the science, I can talk it, but my jam is how can I lower it down? I don't like that term dumb down, but lower down the accessibility to the information so that you want to learn more about it. That's what the Clarity books were all about. I wanted to kind of whet your appetite for what keto was. So then you would read the books by all the nerdy scientist people.
Absolutely, man. That just making it more available to the masses and make it more digestible to everybody has really helped it like exponentially grow. Like I've seen it grow in the States in the past 5 years, give or take. But what was it about this lifestyle that made you think to start a podcast? What was it? What was the goal at the time when you started it?
Well, the podcast came in 2006, so I'm actually at the 15-year anniversary of my podcast. So it's amazing when I the Livin, Vida Low Carb show, there were only 900 total podcasts in the world, and there was no iPhone, there was no nothing. You had to go on a computer, you had to log on to iTunes, then you had to luck out and put in some keywords to try to find some podcast on a topic you wanted. It was so archaic then. We're very sophisticated now, and instead of 900, I think there's 1.4 million podcasts now. So yeah, it's been fun to watch podcasting grow into the monstrosity that it is. People like Joe Rogan out there actually getting $100 million deals to be on Spotify. Like, dude, I want a piece of that. But yeah, I mean, it's the reason I started the podcast was I was blogging for a year, and this guy comes to me and he says, dude, if you talk half as good as you write, you need to be podcasting. And this was, like I said, way back in 2006. And so he ended up becoming the producer of the Livin, Vida Low Carb show in October of 2006. He said, just run with it. And so my first like 50 episodes was like me ranting on like why high fructose corn syrup is the devil. I was just doing little dramatic readings of a lot of my blog posts. And then I started attending some of the different conferences, the obesity conferences where some of the ketogenic research was being talked about. And I remember it was Eric Westman who said, you need to be interviewing some people. I don't know how to interview, dude. I don't know. But he's like, yeah, just talk. In fact, I'll be your first one. So like episode 50 something was Eric Westman. And I'm like, so Dr. Westman, I was just so nervous. I didn't know how to interview, but I got pretty good at it over the years.
Wow, man. If you have been on the low carb diet, it's impossible not to come across your work, Jimmy. Now you talk to thousands of people literally about this subject, really. And I'm going to ask a series of questions about things that you've heard people say on the show. You talk to both experts and regular people who found themselves thriving on low carb diets. This may seem to be a general question, but in your years research and digging into the science and thousands of people on your show, I just want to know, why do some succeed and thrive on low carb and why do some don't?
I think that answer comes down to mindset. When you come into it, and this is the focus of my work now, is trying to get people to get in the right mindset. Because look, by this point, if you haven't figured out eat real food and keep the carbs low, I can't help you anymore. Like, that message is so ubiquitous in our society now. Everybody and their mama will tell you how to eat keto. But if you don't have the mindset to go into it the right way, you're not going to succeed. If you go into it like you have every other diet you've ever done, and you have this expectation because every other diet fails you, you have this expectation that this one's going to fail you too. Guess what? You're going to fail. Like, there's no reason why anybody would expect anything differently. Because if you don't set yourself up for success, you're going to set yourself up for failure. And it all starts with having that this is going to work mindset, having that, look, I've researched this, I see the efficacy in it, and I'm going to give it my all. And it doesn't take willpower, it takes want power. You want this so bad that you're willing to push yourself. Yes, to pain on some days. Yes, to oh my gosh, I can't believe I've pushed myself this hard, but you did.
Mm.
And then it reaps the benefits, and people aren't patient either. I think the whole weight loss industry has corrupted people's expectations. Lose 15 pounds in the first 2 weeks. Okay, if I'm 500 pounds and I poop, I lost 15 pounds. So thank you. But like 500 pounds losing 15 pounds versus a 130-pound woman who thinks she needs to lose weight. Oh, I'm going to lose 15 pounds in 2 weeks. It's unreasonable. And so people have these expectations for weight loss. And then finally, I go on forever and ever on this one, but finally, I think people only quantify success with the gravity detecting device, the scale. That's why I'm not the scale. Yes, weight matters, but we put too much weight, all pun intended, on what the scale tells us to the exception of everything else. Do you feel great? Yes. Do you have more energy? Yes. Is your brain health good and you're calm in your mood? Yes. Blood sugar regulated? Yes. Like all these good things happening, but because a scale isn't doing what you wanted it to do, suddenly keto didn't work. That also discourages people.
Man, you talk about mindset. That's a huge part of anything that you do.
Yeah.
You know, also upbringing maybe play a huge factor in this, but obviously comes a point where you have to take control of your life, right? What can you say that is quite evident with people that had found success that you've seen with these people that you interview? What is evident in them?
Oh, there's a fire in their belly. Like,
where does that come from?
They know the science. They also have seen it in people that they know, whether it's somebody online that they see or it's somebody in their own life. It just, the power of a personal example is so tremendous. I mean, look, I lost 180 pounds in 2004. It's kind of my thrust onto the scene was I had a pretty dramatic weight loss success, and people are drawn to that. How did you do it? What was your secret? And I think anybody that would tell you that has been successful, there's no secret beyond consistency and head down and just doing it. I think people want to know, well, it's got to be more than working hard at it. No, it's working fucking hard at it. Like that's what it takes. You stay consistent with it over a period of time and you can't help but see results.
Man, Jimmy, you started in 2006. It should be easier to do this diet today, right?
Well, 2004, there weren't a whole lot of resources back then to corrupt me. I read the Atkins diet book, and there were a few forums out there. There were actually some low carb magazines at the time because low carb was because of Atkins was kind of popular-ish until he died. But yeah, I think the problem with starting in 2021 is information overload. Everybody's talking about keto and low carb diets now. And so therefore, pow, 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 you've got so many things coming at you that it can be overwhelming. Oh, how much MCT oil do I need to have? Oh, is it higher protein or higher fat? And it can be confusing to people. It's why in my own work, I always come back to the basics. Start with the basics. Don't even think about adding honey. Don't think about anything else, just basics. And if you get the basics down and you want to like venture out and try different things that you hear about, great, but not to start. To start, the diet's not hard. Keep carbs low, eat real food, and eat fat and protein to satiety.
What do you tell them about fat? Somebody that doesn't know anything about keto jumps into keto, looks into the research. You have to have fat. It says 70% something fat. What do you say about that?
I say don't fear it. I think because culturally we have been taught to fear it, especially saturated fat, that cholesterol is not the be all end all. Don't worry about your cholesterol. It might or might not go up. Some people actually eat more fat and their cholesterol comes down. It's pretty amazing the way that works. But then other people are hyper responders. I am one of those people. And when you have more fat, it can actually raise your cholesterol. But one of those things that it raises is your HDL cholesterol, the good cholesterol. And it's like, you want that higher. Yes, your LDL may go up. And then that combination of the HDL and LDL going up makes your total cholesterol near 280, 300, 350, whatever. But look at the triglycerides. This is what all the scientists have been, looking at, because everybody worries about that with a low carb diet. In fact, somebody just yesterday was telling me they went carnivore, and their doctor, the first thing they said was, "Oh, come in, we got to check your cholesterol." And they were like, "Why are they so freaking obsessed about cholesterol, it's not the be all end all. It's triglycerides, which when you eat a carbohydrate reducted diet, they're not going to be over 100. They're going to be well under 100. You're going to have lower inflammation. You never hear doctors talk about like an HSCRP, high sensitivity C-reactive protein. That's a key kind of inflammation marker in the body. They don't talk about those kinds of things. They don't talk about these oils that they say lower your cholesterol, the vegetable oils, and they do lower cholesterol, but at the expense of the good cholesterol. They kill all the large fluffy LDL. They keep behind the small dense LDL that really oxidize and have bad news in your body. This is why, combined with their inflammatory properties, you get heart disease with a low cholesterol level. There was this famous journalist, I wrote about this in Cholesterol Clarity, famous journalist named Tim Russert, way back in the day, from this show on NBC called Meet the Press. And so Tim Russert, very beloved journalist, 54 years old, 54, first ever heart attack, and he died. His total cholesterol, it's going to shock you, total cholesterol was 105. 105. He was supposed to be the picture of health. High cholesterol is supposed to be the enemy. All that fat raising your cholesterol is supposed to be your enemy. And what it ended up being was on a statin medication, temporarily lowering all of his cholesterol. He was eating low fat. He was exercising. He was doing all the right things. And because of the inflammation in his body, he had with a CT heart scan that actually looked for atherosclerotic plaque in his arteries. And his score was through the roof, despite doing all the right things, despite having cholesterol numbers in the right range, despite avoiding fat like the plague. He still fell to the very first heart attack he ever had at the age of 54. Nobody's supposed to die that young. And he did, because he was doing all the things that cardiologists and everybody in the mainstream was telling him to do. And he was afraid of the fat. And so actually there's studies that show it's better to have higher cholesterol from eating more fat than low cholesterol. Low cholesterol makes you a sitting duck. Cholesterol is not an enemy in your body. This is why having fats produces that cholesterol. And yes, we're all fat heads. 70% of your brain is comprised of fat. And so if you are devoid of fat in your diet, your mood will be off. You'll start having like brain fog. You can't think clearly unless you're eating fat. That would be my argument.
Do you ever see keto being, more accepted in the medical field, being just keto being prescribed to a patient with chronic disease? Do you ever see keto being that way in the future?
In the current model of medicine, no, because the current model of medicine is owned by the pharmaceutical companies.
Wow.
And as long as drug that they can put people on, and there's an ICD code that then has the standard of care that says this is the drug that you use to treat that ICD code for the diagnosis, like the diabetes example I gave earlier, no, nothing's going to change. What's going to happen is breaking free from that system. And we're seeing it. Functional medicine doctors are out there. They're breaking free from that. They're looking at root causes. They're wanting nutritional answers and supplement answers to real health problems. And so in the traditional care model, no. In the alternative care model, which is rapidly rising, functional medicine doctors, nutrition-minded chiropractors, naturopaths, you can go down the line of all these people that are helping patients get better. Those are the people that are doing that as we speak. But I think the traditional model is just so irreparably broken. There's no way they could go back and put that genie in the bottle. Now, that being said, there are a lot of traditional medical doctors that learn about keto nutrition and they find ways around it. They may even have to break from the insurance model and go to like concierge care where you pay out of pocket, but at least then you get the care that you want. So I think we're about to see a major shakeup in the medical system in America.
In the next few years?
Yeah.
Yeah?
It has to, because it's unsustainable. Think about what they're doing now. They're putting people on basically Band-Aid medicine, procedures and drugs. These are just Band-Aid measures to what the real problem is, and getting to the root cause. People have caught on. I don't want to be on a drug the rest of my life. I don't want to be progressively worse and worse in my type 2 diabetes, and then a leg gets amputated. And why didn't you tell me I could have fixed this with diet? I think this is why keto being popular in the mainstream has been wonderful, because people's eyes have been open to how much they've been lied to by the medical establishment.
Matt, I'll tell you one story, Jimmy. I have a friend of mine, 29 years old, diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Asked him, what did your doctor tell you? And he doesn't even know anything about health in, like, eating the right way in general. Like, what we know, like broccoli and chicken breast, that's all he knew about what healthy was. And that tells me that there's not really much education with all of these patients being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. This guy shouldn't have diabetes at that age. Type 2 diabetes at that age, Jimmy.
29, that used to be called adult onset diabetes. Now, I know 29 is technically an adult, but usually it's much later in life that people develop it. But it's because they didn't eat this ton of, like, flooding their body with massive carbs. I mean, take my example. I was doing 1,600 grams a day and did that for a long time. How I never developed type 2 diabetes, I'll never know. Now, I have major insulin resistance that makes things harder for me today at almost 50. But man, it seems like kids are getting type 2 diabetes. Used to, it was just unconscionable that a kid in their teens and younger would get type 2 diabetes, but they are, because they're coming out of the womb already insulin resistant, because their mom, while they were in utero, their mom was insulin resistant. And then their mom had gestational diabetes. And so they passed that on to the baby, and the baby comes out and they start feeding them all the carb-based, like baby food, and then eating crap. And then, oh, you're a kid, you're allowed to just live it up. That's what kids do, have the ice cream and the cakes and the cookies. And then suddenly at 8, 9 years old, they're obese and they're already on their way to type 2 diabetes. It's disgusting how we've allowed this to happen.
What would you say to somebody that just got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes? How should one look at it, number one? And number two, what if they don't know anything about they never even heard of keto or low carb, and nobody talked to them about that? What would you say to them? How would they approach just being diagnosed with type 2?
First, I would ask them, what did your doctor say? Doctor's probably going to say, okay, you need to take this metformin. Okay. And it's going to get worse and worse as you get older. And I would ask them a logical question. Why would you get worse and worse? Because if the drug is supposed to be making you better, why wouldn't you be getting better and better? And so would you like to get better and better? I've found a way to lower your A1C. What is it now? Oh, it's 6.4. Okay. Yeah. You're on the mild case of diabetes. You're definitely diabetic, but what if I could tell you I could get it down to 5.4 within about 6 to 12 months? Would that be interesting to you? And maybe even below 5.0 as a type 2 diabetic. That's where you get their attention. And then you tell them, all right, do you like meat? Is that good? No, not chicken breast. No, we're not going to make you eat chicken breast. That makes you hungry. Do you like ribeye steaks? Do you like bacon? Do you like asparagus? Those things sound good. Yeah, bacon wrapped asparagus. Exactly. We can do that for you. And then you just pitch it to them. And they're like, really? That's all I have to do? And then, and when you get into this, you're going to find you're very satisfied with the foods that your body will just spontaneously intermittent fast. And so those things will heal that pancreas and help your body deal with your diabetes, to the point that, yes, you still have type 2 diabetes, but it will be in clinical remission in very short order, without drugs, without insulin, without procedures, without worrying about the future of it becoming progressively worse. Is that something you're willing to do and do for the rest of your life? Most people would be like, yeah, sign me up.
Jimmy, what excuses have you heard time and time again from people that want to start? You always hear them wanting to start, but what is it, that one thing that you think stops them from actually taking the step?
Well, besides the mindset thing of not knowing that it's going to work, I think they think it's too restrictive. And that one's always been funny to me, because I've been on low fat diets. You want to talk about a restrictive diet? Okay, yeah, you still get to have these low fat, whatever here and there. but telling people they can have luxurious foods. This is one thing I loved about Dr. Atkins, the way he described the Atkins diet. You get to eat the most luxurious, luscious foods in the world. And he's right, all the fat and protein foods. Who doesn't like pork belly? When I go to Austin, Texas, I love getting brisket, fatty brisket, dude. And I could just eat that and it would be wonderful. I think you accentuate what you get to have, not what you exclude. People, oh, I'll miss bread. Oh, I'll miss sweets. Okay. In the interim, you will. And maybe that's where some of these keto products could be helpful. I know Maria Emmerich has a nice like Wonder Bread type of recipe that's just egg whites and one other ingredient.
Yep.
And so I say, do what you got to do to get started, but take that restrictive thing out of your mind and imagine back when you ate low fat. If I told you could have bacon and hamburgers and full fat cheese and butter, you would have like hugged my neck and said, thank you. Thank you. Well, now it's on the table and all you're doing is removing the crappy garbage. Done deal. Sign me up.
So Jimmy, if like you were before you started keto, you said before you started, you had 1,600 grams of carbs. If someone is at that point right now, what's the first step? How do I get rid of that?
I would titrate them down. Not go to 20 right away. That was murderous, dude. I think I would immediately say, okay, all those Cokes you were drinking, which probably accounted for maybe 400 to 500 grams of that, maybe 600 grams of that 1,600. I would say, okay, let's switch you over. It's not great, but it's switch you over to Diet Coke or today Coke Zero or something like that. And let's see if we can make that 16 down to like 6 to 8, just to start. Like that would be a nice titration down. And then with like the Little Debbie snack cakes, okay, let's give you recipes that will give you something like that would be sweet, that again, to help you titrate down. People poo-poo on the products and things like that and recipes that are junk food. I don't in the transition. I think if you see it from the reality of someone like myself, circa 2003 going into this, I needed things to get me off so I wouldn't be so, it wasn't so shocked to my system. I think getting someone on from 1,600 grams of carbs down to 200 to 300 is a huge drop. And yet you could still do it, nourish them well, make sure they're eating adequate calories. Don't let them skimp on the calories to start. Because just in carbs alone, just those carbs, never mind fat and protein I was having, just the carbs was 6,000 calories. And so if I suddenly come down in those calories from the sugar, I need to replace them at least somewhat close to that so I don't turn on all this hunger. I was starving when I first started on the Atkins diet. I was starving because I was trying to eat so much less because all these carbs were out of my life. I wasn't ramping up fat and protein. And I wish I'd known. I wasn't as educated at that point. So helping people titrate, I think, would be the best way to do that if they started in that predicament today.
Man, Jimmy, this has been a blast. If you'd like to get Jimmy's book, I recommend that you go to livinlavidalowcarb.com, LLVLC-book-store, his website, livinglavidalowcarb.com, Jimmy Moore, LLVLC on YouTube, and Livin Low Carb Man